Shalom, 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 everybody. Welcome back, man. Welcome back to Reading with Shilo. It's your boy, Shilo. Shilo in the house. Shilo. And we're here for the next edition, part two of Emancipated from the Mental Slavery by selected sayings of Mr. Marcus Garvey. Mr. Marcus Garvey. We're going to jump into part two and see what Mr. Marcus Garvey is talking about. So, shalom everybody on YouTube, shalom everybody on Facebook. Let's get into it. Emancipated from mental slavery. Selected sayings of Marcus Garvey. Part two. So his sayings, I guess that's what they are, his sayings are going in the alphabetical order from A to W. From A to W. And we left off in F. We left off in F on future. Future. So that's what we're going to pick up at. Future. Future. The future. Subjects of deep interest to the race will be discussed, among them the economic future of the African. Annual Convention in New York, Negro World, March 29, 1924. Men of the African race, let me see to you that a greater future is in store for us. We have no cause to lose hope, to become faint-hearted. We must realize that upon ourselves depend our destiny, our future. We must carve out that future, that destiny. And we who make up the Universal Negro Improvement Association have pledged ourselves that nothing in the world shall stand in our way. Nothing in the world shall discourage us, but opposition shall make us work harder, shall bring us closer together, so that as one man, the millions of us will march on towards that goal that we have set for ourselves. To prevent enemies of established order making capital out of the act of injustice, persecution, and prejudice to inflame in the future, and at the time of need, the minds of millions of blacks throughout the world against bureaucracy, oligarchy, imperialism, and capitalism, which may have a strong appeal in the light of history for the unfortunate and oppressed, whom I am endeavoring to lead by a peaceful and friendly agitation for the reasonable return of their African heritage. There are things that strike the thoughtful African as being dangerous, and these are the things that cause us who make up the Universal Negro Improvement Association to be fighting tenaciously for the purpose of building up a strong African race, so as to make it possible for us to be exterminated so as to make it impossible for us to be exterminated in the future, to make room for a stronger race, even as the North American Indian has been exterminated to make room for the great white man in the North American continent. The time has come for both races to seriously adjust their differences and settle the future of our respective peoples. The selfish of both races will not stop to think and act, but the responsibility becomes more so ours, who have the vision of the future. Fool not yourselves that the conferences that have been held and will be held in the future are sufficient to settle the disgruntled state of the world, the dissatisfied condition of humanity. What you do today that is worthwhile inspires others to act in action, self-reliance, the vision of self, and the future have been the only means by which oppressed have seen and realized the light of their own freedom. There is history. It tells the tales of the past. It will of the future. It will of the future. then why not make the future right? 8. If you will but think down the future and compare the possibilities of that future with the happenings of the past, you will come to the conclusion that there is no salvation for the African but through a free and independent Africa. The hope of the Black race lies in our new blood, the new African, who is already rising to the heights of nationhood. He is the man of the future. By science, art, history, politics, industry, and religion, he will rise above the environments and in another 100 years shall have laid the pillars of the greatest civilization the world has ever seen. It is good for the honest, considerate, humanitarian, and progressive elements and the blood of the other races to join in with and be friends of this new school for the reasonableness. For this new school, for by reasonableness, equity, and reciprocal sympathy, we can all work together, but racially and nationally separate, for the proper adjustment of our human ills, and thus save future generations the miseries attendant upon a history of injustice, advantage, and corruption. The thing for the African to do, therefore, is to adjust his own economic present in readiness for the future. As we have in the past been living upon the mercy shown us by others and by the chances obtainable and have suffered therefrom, so will we in the future suffer in an effort is not now, if an effort is not now to adjust our own affairs. I trust each and every one of you, therefore, will realize that you have a duty which is incumbent upon you, a duty that you must perform because our forebears who suffered, who bled, who died had hopes that are not completely realized. They hoped that we, as their children, would be free, but they also hoped that their country from whence they came would also be free to their children, their grandchildren, and great grandchildren at some future time. I desire to impress upon the 400 million, now over 1 billion, members of my race that our failings in the past, present, and of the future will be through our failure to know ourselves and to realize the true functions of man on this mundane sphere. The Universal Negro Improvement Association existed but in the name 4 years ago in 1917. Today it is known as the greatest moving force among Africans. We have accomplished this through unity of effort and unity of purpose. It is a fair demonstration of what we will be able to accomplish in the very future, when the millions who are outside the pale of the Universal Negro Improvement Association will have linked themselves up with us. By our success of the last 4 years, we will be able to estimate the grander success of a free and redeemed Africa. In climbing the heights to where we are today, we have had to surmount difficulties. We have had to climb over obstacles, but the obstacles were stepping stones to the future greatness of the cause we represent. In our own sphere in America and the Western world, we find that we are being camouflaged, not so much by those with whom we are competing for our economic, political existence, but by men from within our own race, either as agents of the opposition or as unconscious fools who are endeavoring to flatter us into believing that our future should rest with chance and with providence, believing that through these agencies will come the solution of the restless problem. But those of us who lead are well versed in Western civilization and are determined that the Black man shall not be a creature of the past, but a full-fledged man of the present and a power to be reckoned with in the future. Be it resolved that the African people of the world, through their chosen respected representatives, in convention assembled in Liberty Hall in the city of New York, the United States of America, in August 1st to August 31st, in the year of our Lord 1920, protest against the wrongs and injustices they are suffering at the hands of their white brethren, and state what they deem their fair and just rights, as well as the treatment they propose to demand of all men in the future. Preamble, Declaration of Rights of the Negro peoples of the world. The preamble. I think that's something we might have to look up. The preamble. The preamble. The preamble. Who has that? Preamble. The preamble. The Declaration of Rights of the Negro people of the world. I am criticized and called a member of the KKK in alliance with the Anglo-Saxon clubs, the white American societies, etc. But how could any reasonable person accept the white man to be such a fool? Expect the white man to be such a fool in an age so aggressive as to give the African voluntarily and without resistance all he wants and asks for in America and Africa, too, with the grave problem of the future before him. The battles of the future, whether they be physical or mental, will be fought in scientific lines or on scientific lines. And the race that is able to produce the highest scientific development is the race that will ultimately rule. Kind of sounds like Wakanda. Some Wakanda stuff. So Africans, I say, through the Universal Negro Improvement Association, that there is much to live for. I have a vision of the future. I see before me a picture of redeemed Africa with her dotted cities, with her beautiful civilization, with her millions of happy children going to and fro. Why should I lose hope? Why should I give up and take a back place in this age of progress? Remember that you are men, that God created you lords of this creation. Lift up yourselves, men. Take yourselves out of the mire and hitch your hopes to the stars. Yes, rise as high as the very stars themselves. Let no man pull you down. Let no man destroy your ambition, because man is but your companion, your equal. Man is your brother. He is not your Lord. He is not your sovereign master. It is in a desire to locate the African in the position of prosperity and happiness in the future that the Universal Negro Improvement Association is making this great fight for the races, emancipation everywhere, and the founding of a great African government. Be as proud of your race today as our fathers were in the days of yore. We have a beautiful history, and we shall create another in the future that will astonish the world. God. Take away the highest ideal, faith and confidence in God, and mankind at large is reduced to savagery and the race destroyed. God is a bold sovereign, warrior Lord. The God we worship and adore is a God of war as well as a God of peace. He does not allow anything to interfere with his power and authority. The greatest battle ever fought was not between the Kaiser of Germany on the one hand and the Allied powers on the other. It was between Almighty God on the one hand and Lucifer, the archangel, on the other. When Lucifer challenged God's power in heaven and marshaled his forces on the plains of paradise, the God we worship and adore also marshaled his forces, his archangel, his cherubims, and his seraphims, and in battle array. He placed himself before them with the royal standard of heaven. He faced the opposing General Lucifer with the hordes on the battle plains of heaven, and there the great war began. The whole universe shook as the battle raged between the two opposing forces. And as God, the Creator, gained the upper hand on Lucifer, what did he do? Did he hoist the white flag of peace? No. God Almighty, God the Omnipotent, took hold of Lucifer and flung him from the heights of heaven to the depths of hell, thereby proving that he is a God of peace. And when anyone transgresses his power, he goes to war in defense of his rights. If the white man has the idea of a white God, let him worship his God as he desires. If the yellow man's God is of his race, let him worship the God as he sees fit. We, as Africans, have found a new idea. Whilst our God has no color, yet it is human to see everything through one's own spectacles. And since the white people have seen that God through white spectacles, we have only now started our late though it be, to see our God through our own spectacles. The God of Isaac and the God of Jacob, let him exist for the race that believes in the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob. We Africans believe in the God of Ethiopia, the everlasting God, God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Ghost, and the one God of all ages. That is the God of whom we believe. But we shall worship him through the spectacles of Ethiopia. If we were you, I would search myself to find out if there is any good in me. Man, remember that outside of God, you are an absolute creator. Outside of God, there is no power to subjugate you to be your own power, but your own power. So long as there is God, as long as there is heaven, as long as the elements exist, and man is man, the black man, so help me God, shall not go down and shall not accept defeat. I hope I can impress on you the fact that you can be a new man, a new race. If you use your God given powers, you can excel in all things and overcome the evils of other men and be what God intended you to: happy, industrious, progressive, and courageous. Every man who has a soul and every man who has a mind is after and in the image of his creator God. And when any man in the image of God goes below that level, he is not only reducing the God in him, he is humiliating the God in him. God is as powerful, and man is made just a little lower than the angels, who are made a little lower than God. And man is linked with God. So man is part of God. And there can be no God without man, and man without God. Man, therefore, is an agent of God. And God is universal intelligence, and man is a universal part of God. And as the universal intelligence of God created a universe, so he confers upon man a power out of which he created the universe for his happiness and for his joy. If you get not happiness out of the earth, it is not blamable to God. It is because of your indifference to your own responsibility and to your own function as man and part of God's intelligence. Let the sky and God be our limit, and eternity our measurement. There is no height to which we cannot climb by using the active intelligence of our own minds. Mind creates, and as much as we desire in nature, we can have through the creation of our own minds. God Almighty created all men equal, whether they be white, yellow, or black, and for any race to admit that it cannot do with others have it cannot do what others have done is to hurl an insult at the Almighty who created all races equal in the beginning. Government. Now, I don't go with that. God did not create all races equal. He chose his part from the beginning, his favorite from the beginning, the ones who are above all people from the beginning. Government. Government is not infallible. Government is only an executive control, a centralized authority for the purposes of expressing the will of the people. Before you have a government, you must have the people. Without the people, there can be no government. The government must be, therefore, an expression of the will of the people. Our modern systems of government have partly failed and are wholly failing, have partly failed and are wholly failing. We have tried various forms, but none has measured up to the ideal state. Communism was the last attempt, and its most ordinate advocates have acknowledged its limitations, shortcomings, and impossibilities. The reason for all the failure is not far to seek. The sum total of governmental collapse is traceable to the growing spirit of selflessness, graft, and greed within the individual. Naturally, the state cannot govern itself. It finds expression and executive, and it finds expressions and executes its edicts through individuals. Hence, the state is human. Its animation is but the reflex of our human characters. If we must correct the maladministration, if we must correct the maladministration of the state and apply the corporate majesty of the people to their own good, then we must reach the source and there reorganize or reform. History. A people without the knowledge of their past, history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. It ain't gonna grow. It ain't gonna grow. But when we come to consider the history of man, was not the African a power? Was he not great once? Yes, honest students of history can recall the day when Egypt, Kemet, Ethiopia, and Timbuktu towered as their civilizations, towered above Europe, towered above Asia. When Europe was inhabited by a race of cannibals, a race of savages, naked men, heathens, and pagans, Africa was peopled with a race of cultivated blacks, of cultured blacks, who were masters in art, science, and literature, men who were cultured and refined, men who, it was said, were like the gods. Even the great poets of old sang in beautiful sonnets of the delights it afforded the gods to be in the companionship with the Ethiopians. Why then should we lose hope? Black men, you were great, you were once great. You will be great again. Lose not courage and lose not faith, but go forward. Industry. Every student of political science, every student of economics knows that the race can only be saved through a solid industrial foundation, that the race can only be saved through political independence. Take away political freedom from a race, and you have a group of slaves. Injustice. The only protection against injustice in man is power, physical, financial, and scientific. There is no sense in hate. It comes back to you. Therefore, make your history so laudable, magnificent, and untarnished that another generation will not seek to repay your seed for the sins inflicted upon their fathers. The bones of injustice have a peculiar way of rising from the tombs to plague and mock the iniquitous. The intellectual. The present day Negro, or colored intellectual, is no less a liar and a cunning thief than his illustrious teacher. His Occidental collegiate training only fits him to be a rogue and a vagabond and a seeker after the easiest and best by following the line of least resistance. He is lazy, dull, and uncreative. His purpose is to deceive the less fortunate of his race, and by his wiles ride easily into the position and wealth at their expense, and industrious whites. To every rule, however, there is an exception. In this case, it must be applied. King, I asked, where is the black man's government? Where is his king and his kingdom? Where is his president, his country, and his ambassadors, his army, his navy, his men of big affairs? I could not find them, and then I declared, I will help to make them. Leadership. Leadership means everything: pain, blood, death. Life. Life is that existence that is given to man to live for a purpose, to live to his own satisfaction and pleasure, providing he forgets not the God who created him and who expects a spiritual obedience and observation of the moral laws that he inspired. Most of the things we attribute to causes apart from us could be remedied by knowing ourselves better. Really, man is the maker of his world, the creator of his own opportunities. If we could get the African people all over the world to realize this, that in the individual himself lies a remedy for nearly every ill that he suffers from, that in the individual himself is that resident power that can be turned to usefulness for permanent good, what a change there will be. I had a happy time in prison because I went to prison in the cause of justice, in the cause of human liberty. In the first time I went to prison, I was so physically upset and so near dying that I never knew it until I found out that my nerves were partially gone. So that saved my life. Love, a happy but miserable state in which man finds himself from time to time. Sometimes he believes he is miserable. Sometimes he believes he is happy by loving. Then suddenly he finds out how miserable he is. It is all joy. It is sweet. It sweetens life, but it does not last. It comes and goes. But when it is active, there is no greater virtue because it makes one supremely happy. We cannot hold our love, but there is one love that never changes or is mistaken, and that is God's. The longer we hold our love, the nearer we approach like unto our Creator. Look up, you mighty race. Look up, you mighty race. The African should therefore look up. He has a mighty task before him, and he should be now fully occupied giving attention to it. If the African thinks properly, he will realize that on him falls a serious responsibility and duty to salvage the bankrupt civilization of white Europe. This may sound very ambitious, but after all, the African isn't here for fun. He hasn't survived the centuries of hardships and difficulties just to die again. He naturally must have been learning by experience, and that experience ought to guide him over the shoals of 20th century political bankruptcy. Man. God placed man on earth as the Lord of creation. The elements, all nature, are at his command. It is for him to harness them, subdue them, and use them. Edison harnessed electricity. Today, the world reflects the brilliance of his grand illumination. Stephenson, through experimentations, has given us the use of the steam engine. And today the railroad trains files across the country at the speed of 60 miles an hour. Marconi conquered the currents of the air, and today we have wireless telegraphy that flashes news across the continents with a rapidity never known to man. All this reveals to us that man is the supreme Lord of creation, that in man lies the power of mastery, a mastery of self, a mastery of all things created, bowing only to the Almighty Architect in those things that are spiritual. I desire to impress upon the 400 million members of my race that our failings in the past, present, and of the future will be through our failings to know ourselves and to realize that the true functions of man in this mundane sphere. Nationality. Again, I say great principles, great ideals know no nationality. I know no national boundary where the African is concerned. The whole world is my province until Africa is free. Nationhood. Nationhood is the only means by which modern civilization can completely protect itself. Independence of nationality, independence of government, is the means of protecting only the individual. It means of protecting only the individual. But the group. Don't sound right. Nationhood is the only means by which modern civilization can completely protect itself. Independence of nationality, independence of government, is the means of protecting only the individual, but the group. I think it's supposed to be is not only. Is the means of not only protecting, it's not means of protecting only the individual, but the group. If the African is inferior, why circumvent him? Why suppress his talent and initiative? Why rob him of his independent gifts? Why fool him out of the rights of country? Why imprison him his intelligence and exploit his ignorance? Why keep him down by the laws of inequality? Why not leave him alone to his own intelligence? Why not give him a chance to grow and develop as he sees fit? Why not free him from the incubus of the forced upon superiority? Why not allow him free and unhampered to travel toward nationhood? If the whites are good sports, they will give the blacks a chance. And I predict that in 50 years, undisturbed or unmolested, I will show you a nation of proud, refined, and cultured black men and women whose comeliness will outshine that of the age of Solomon. One. One God, one aim, one destiny. One God, one aim, one destiny. Organization. The thing to do is to get organized. Keep separated and you will be exploited. You will be robbed. You will be killed. Get organized and you will compel the world to respect you. If the world fails to give you consideration because you are black men, because you are Africans, 400 million of you shall, through organization, shake the pillars of the universe and bring down creation, even as Samson brought down the temple upon his head and upon the heads of the Philistines. I am not advising you to arm now with the things they have. I am asking you to arm through organization, arm through preparedness. You do not want to have guns and bombs just now, and you have no immediate use for them. So they can throw away those things. If they want in Washington on Armistice Day, so they can throw away those things if they want to, if they want in Washington on Armistice Day. I am saying to the African people of the world, get armed with organization. Get armed by coming together 400 million strong. That is their weapon. That is your weapon. Their weapon in the past has been big guns and explosive shells. Your weapon must be universal organization. You have no fight amongst yourselves as between capital and labor, because all of us are laborers. Therefore, we need not be socialists. We have no fight against Perry, because all of us are belonging to the suffering party. So when it comes to organization, we occupy a unique position. Peace. There can be no peace among men and nations. There can be no peace among men and nations as long as the strong continues to oppress the weak. So long as injustice is done to the other peoples, just so long will we have cause for war and make a lasting peace an impossibility. The peace of the world can be settled by political conferences or by industrial conferences only. If we are to have a world peace, it will only come when a great interracial conference is called, when Jew will meet Gentile, when Anglo-Saxon will meet Teuton, when the great Caucasian family will meet the Mongolian, and when all will meet the African, and then and there straighten out the differences that have kept us apart for hundreds of years and will continue to keep us apart until doomsday, if something is not done to create a better racial understanding. Look around, and wherever you find a black man, he is a man of peace. So do not mistake me. So do not mistake me that I am for war. I am not. I am out for human justice, and I am sensible enough to know that so long as the robber retains the loot, the man who has lost his property cannot be at peace with his vicious neighbor or with anyone else he suspects. Poverty, a hellish state to be in. It is no virtue. It is a crime. To be poor is to be hungry without possible hope of food, to be sick without hope of medicine, to be tired and sleepy without a place to lay one's head, to be naked without the hope of clothing, to be despised and comfortless. To be poor is to be a fit subject for crime and hell. To be poor is to be a fit subject for crime and hell. The hungry man steals bread and thereby breaks the eighth commandment. By his state, he breaks all the laws of God and the man and becomes an outcast. In thought and deed, he converts his neighbor's goods. Comfortless as he is, he seeks his neighbor's wife. To him, there is no other course but sin and death. That is the weight of poverty. No one wants to be poor. No one wants to be poor. Power is the only argument. Excuse me, power. Power is the only argument that satisfies man. Except the individual, the race, or the nation has power that is exclusive, it means that that individual, race, or nation will be bound by the will of the other who possess this great qualification. It is the navel and political power of Great Britain that keeps her mistress of the seas. It is the commercial and financial power of the United States of America that makes her the greatest banker in the world. Hence, it is advisable for the African to get power of every kind: power in education, science, industry, politics, and higher government. That kind of power that will stand out that will stand out signally so that other races and nations can see, and if they will not see, then feel. Man is not satisfied or moved by prayers or petitions, but every man is moved by that power of authority which forces him to do even against his will. Hmm. I pray to God that we shall never use our physical prowess to oppress the human race, but we will use our strength, physically, morally, and otherwise, to preserve humanity and civilization. The difference between people brings us to the point where one man, realizing himself and his power, will stick stubbornly to the accomplishment of the task he set out to do until he does it and attains his objective. That is the man of personality, which has used his objective power to bring within his grasp all that he needs. He is a beacon of light in our civilization and our world. He is the successful man on the hilltop. He is the prosperous man on the plains. He is the good citizen that everybody knows and to whom everybody goes. He has used his power to help himself, and in turn, he helps others. Hmm? Well, the rise to the intelligence of efficiency and the self-determination, and discover yourselves as a capable people, a self-reliant race, determined to use your latent powers for your own progress and your own development, and you start out sincerely and honestly to do it. I believe that in another 35 to 50 years, and you may become leaders of this civilization. Successor to Marcus Garvey, this man, James Robert Stewart, was the successor, the President General of the UNIA, the successor to Mr. Marcus Garvey. Prejudice. Prejudice of the white race against the black race is not so much because of color as of condition. Because as a race, to them, we have accomplished nothing. We have built no nation, no government, because we are dependent for our economic and political existence. Preparedness. Preparedness is the watchword of this age. For us as a race to remain, as we have been in the past, divided amongst ourselves, parochializing. I think I'm saying that wrong, and I don't know what it means. Paro, paroch, parochial, parochializing, parochializing in insularizing, parochializing and insularizing and nationalizing. Let me see, parochializing. PARO. Parochial. Parochial is in here. Parochializing. parochial, 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 related to a parish, narrow, provincial, narrowness of opinions, parochializing and insularizing. Insularizing, insularizing. Insularizing, insularizing. INSU. INSUL. INSUL. ARISING. Insulate. Insularizing, insularizing, insularator, insulation, insulating, insulated, insularizing. Let me check the other dictionary. Insular. Insularizing. It's not really in here either, but insular is. Insular means of relating to or constituting an island, dwelling or situated on an island. Characteristics of an isolated people, being, having, or reflecting a narrow provincial viewpoint of or relating to an island of cells or tissue. Insularizing. Insularity. I'm not really understanding. I'm not really understanding that. Let's keep going. Preparedness is the watchword of this age. For us as a race to remain, as we have been in the past, divided amongst ourselves, parochializing, insularizing, and nationalizing our activities as subjects and citizens of the many alien races and governments under which we live, is but to hold ourselves in readiness for the great catastrophe that is bound to come. that of racial extermination at the hands of the stronger race, the race that will be fit to survive. All good psychologists realize that if you set a man thinking, you are likely to produce through him results that never would have been possible otherwise. The object I have in view is to get the Negro to accomplish much for himself out of his own thoughtfulness. Principle. You cannot crucify a principle. You cannot nail the souls of men to a cross. You cannot imprison it. You cannot bury it. It will rise like the spirit of the great Redeemer and take its flight down the ages until men far and near have taken up the cry for why or for which the principle was crucified. Propaganda. We are living in a civilization that is highly developed. We are living in a world that is scientifically arranged in which everything done by those who control is done through system. Proper arrangement, proper organization, and among some of the organized methods used to control the world is the thing known and called propaganda. Propaganda has done more to defeat the good intentions of races and nations than even open war. Red, Black, and Green, August 13th, 1920. Yes, to 2020, 100 years of red, black, and green. The flag of all Black people worldwide, the red, black, and green, was created on August 13th, 1920 in New York City's Madison Square Garden. The RBG was presented to the world as part of the 1920 Declaration of Rights of the Negro People of the World that day with Marcus Garvey as chairman. Propaganda is a method or medium used by organized people to convert others against their will. We of the African race are suffering more than any other race in the world from propaganda. Propaganda to destroy our hopes, our ambitions, and our confidence in self. This propaganda is disassociating Western Africans from Africa. It's not a new one. For many years, white propagandists have been printing tons of literature to impress scattered Ethiopia, especially that portion within their civilization, with the idea that Africa is a despised place, inhabited by savages and cannibals, where no civilized human being should go, especially Black civilized human beings. This propaganda is promulgated for the cause that is being realized today. That cause is colonial expansion for the white nations of the world. It gives me great pleasure to again welcome you to Liberty Hall and to compliment you really upon the splendid spirit you have shown, for the splendid intelligence you have manifested in supporting this cause. There are some people who cannot stand counter propaganda or a counter idea of any kind. If you convince them of one thing and someone comes along and presents a new proposition, they start to waver, and a third party comes along and he is nowhere. He is neither belong to one nor the other. He is nowhere. But the people who make up the Universal Negro Improvement Association in the whole are known to be people of one mind. Cheers. And that one mind is a free and independent Africa. Cheers. Irrespective of propaganda or no propaganda, we have made up our minds on that one thing, a free and independent Africa. During this time, I desire to make you understand that the propaganda of the UNIA looms up most prominently in the eyes of the world. It calls forth on the part of those who are in sympathy of us a notion of support, and it calls for on the part of those who do not agree with us a notion of opposition and a widely scattered counter propaganda. Some of you may be disturbed, or some of you may become curious about what the counter propagandists say. I am not. I cannot be disturbed because all these things came to me long before I started and I calculated them. So cheers, race. I am not opposed to the white race as charged by my enemies. I have no time to hate anyone. All my time is devoted to the upbuilding and development of the African race. The race needs men of vision and ability, men of character, and above all, men of honesty. And that is hard to find. The great stumbling block in the way of progress in the race is invariably come from within the race itself. Most of the present leaders of the African race are very much obsessed over the term or designation Negro, just as years ago, and even now, they were provoked over the term African. Once certain leaders held up their noses against being called African, and that according to the white man's use of African, the African was regarded as the man-eating animal who had no ability, no worldview, and no ambition. Even up to now, a large number of Africans still believe this description of the African, so much so that the great mass of people that lead are in the wilderness as to whether they are to be called Negroes, Africans, Ethiopians, Hamites, colored people, and a dozen other such names. In a world of wolves, one should get armed. And one of the most powerful defensive weapons within the reach of Africans is the practice of race first in all parts of the world. Race first. Race first. Show me the race or the nation without a flag, and I will show you a race of people without a pride. Man. Religion. Man's religion is something that we cannot eliminate from his system or destroy in him. Therefore, in the folly for any man, for any man to go about attacking another man's religion, because to him it is fundamental. You may be Christian, you may be Mohammedan. That is your religion. We are all entitled to our religious beliefs. Therefore, any man who goes out and attacks religion, thinking he can convert men to the organization by so doing, is not helping the organization. He is doing it more harm than good. We have reached a point where if we are to accomplish anything, whatever we should have whatever we should have unison and accord. We have reached the point where if we are to accomplish anything, whatever we should have, unison and accord. We only have to look at the other races and we find the majority stand together on one religious belief. We have found men of the white world standing together in one belief. We have found men of the brown world standing together in one belief. The yellow people having their singular belief in that respect, and this singular belief has kept them together and strengthened them. The black man let no religious scruples, no political machination divide us, but let us hold together under all climes and in every country, making among ourselves a racial empire upon which the sun shall never set. Responsibility. Remodel yourselves. Remake yourselves mentally and spiritually. Place responsibility in your own two hands. You are responsible for what you are. You are responsible for what you want to be. And in the final analysis, you are responsible to the Creator for having failed or achieved this purpose for you. Righteousness. Our cause is based upon righteousness. And anything that is not righteous, we have no respect for, because God Almighty is our leader and Jesus Christ our standard bearer. Slavery. Slavery is a condition imposed on individuals or races not sufficiently able to protect or defend themselves. And so long as a race or people expose themselves to the danger of being weak, no one can tell when they will be redeemed to slavery. When a man is a slave, he has no liberty of action, no freedom of will. He is bound and controlled by the will and act of others. As of the individual, so of the race. You can enslave, as you did for 300 years, the bodies of men. You can shackle the hands of men. You can shackle the feet of men. You can imprison the bodies of men, but you cannot shackle or imprison the minds of men. Solution. As for Africans are concerned, in America, we have a problem of lynching people and disenfranchisement. In the West Indies, South and Central America, we have the problem of peonage, serfdom, industrial and political government inequality. In Africa, we have not only peonage, and serfdom, but outright slavery, racial exploitation, and alien political monopoly. We cannot allow a continuation of these crimes against our race. As 400 million men, women, and children worthy of the existence given us by the divine creator, we are determined to solve our own problem by redeeming our motherland Africa from the hands of alien exploiters and found there a government, a nation of our own, strong enough to lend protection to the members of our race scattered all over the world, and to compel the respect of the nations and races of the earth. If the African were to live in this Western hemisphere for another 500 years, he would still be outnumbered by other races who are prejudiced against him. He cannot resort to the government for protection, for the government will be in the hands of the majority of the people who are prejudiced against him. Hence, for the African to depend on the ballot and his industrial progress alone will be hopeless, as it does not help him when he is lynched, burned, crowed, and segregated. The future of the African, therefore, outside of Africa spells ruin and disaster. Me too. Sovereignty. To me, a man has no master but God. Man in his authority is a sovereign Lord. As for the individual man, so of the individual race. This feeling makes man so courageous, so bold, as to make it impossible for his brother to intrude upon his rights. So few of us can understand what it takes to make a man. The man who will never say die. The man who will never give up. The man who will never depend on others to do for him what he ought to do for himself. The man who will not blame God, who will not blame nature, who will not blame fate for his condition, but the man who will go out and make conditions to suit himself. Oh, how disgusting life becomes when on every hand you hear people who bear your image, who bear your resemblance, telling you that they cannot make it, that fate is against them, that they cannot get a chance. If 400 million Negroes can only get to know themselves, to know that in them is a sovereign power, is an authority that is absolute, then in the next 25 or 24 hours, we would have a new race. We would have a nation, an empire, resurrected not from the will of others to see us rise, but from our own determination to rise, irrespective of what the world thinks. Traitors. In the fight to reach the top, the oppressed have always been encumbered by the traitors of their own race, made up of those of little faith and those who are generally susceptible to bribery for the selling out of the rights of their own people. The traitor of other races is generally confined to the mediocre or irresponsible individual. But unfortunately, the traitor among the African race are generally to be found among the men highest placed in education and society, the fellows who call themselves leaders. The UNIA, the Universal Negro Improvement Association, represents the hopes and aspirations of the awakened African. Our desire is for a place in the world, not to disturb the tranquility of other men, but to lay down our burden and rest our weary backs and feed by the banks of the Niger and sing our songs and chant our hymns to the God of Ethiopia. Yes, we want rest from the toil of centuries, rest of political freedom, rest of economic and industrial liberty, rest to be socially free and unmolested, rest from lynching and burning. Out of slavery, we have come with our tears and sorrows, and we now lay them at the feet of the American white civilization. We cry to the considerate white people for help, because in their midst we can scarce help ourselves. We are strangers in a strange land. We cannot sing, we cannot play on our harps, for our hearts are sad. We are sad because the tears of our mothers, and the cries of our fathers. Have you not heard the plaintive wail? It is your father and my father burning at the stake. But thank God there is a larger humanity growing among the good and the considerate white people of this country, and they are going to help. They will help us to recover our souls. I don't believe none of that. I don't believe none of that. But anyway, as you may know, the Universal Negro Improvement Association represents the African masses in America and the West Indies. For 6 years, this association has carried on a continuous system of education among its people to the end that they be organized into one great movement, looking forward to their return to Africa, from whence their forefathers were taken centuries ago, and to rehabilitate themselves and once more possess themselves of the land. Say it again, sir. I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about it, Daddy reading. I'm not worried about that being on. Daddy is reading. I'm almost done. We're going to get Yachty some food in a minute after Daddy finished reading. All right. Go get a bottle of water. I'll open it for you. Go get me a bottle of water too, please. Thank you. Be careful. Oh, boy. As you may know, the Universal Negro Improvement Association represents the African masses in America and in the West Indies. For 6 years, this association has carried on the continuous system of education among its people to the end that they be organized into one great movement looking forward to their return to Africa, from whence their forefathers were taken centuries ago, and to there rehabilitate themselves and once more possess themselves of the land of which they were original owners. With this end in view, it was decided that the most convenient way of their being able to help their native land, Africa, was through assisting the Republic of Liberia to establish herself as a successful nation through her higher industrial, agricultural, and commercial development, thereby proving completely the Africans' undisputed ability for self-government. Government. That's our government. Nature is free and ever willing to yield to intelligence, ever willing to give up her secrets, her wealth, her power to men capable of harnessing them and utilizing them. And that is why there is a difference in the condition of people in the world today. Those who understand themselves and use their powers to subdue and subjugate others and things, while others, like our race, look to others to take care of us, give us jobs, and direct our lives naturally to suit themselves. That is why the UNIA is changing the thinking of the African everywhere to do for himself, and those who look like him to write the 400 million to fulfill their God-given potentialities. Oh, what a beautiful world I have in mind. What a beautiful world in my vision of 11 million members of the UNIA trying to get the 400 million members of our race to see this beautiful world of the emancipated race and an Africa redeemed, of millions of Black men standing together proudly. The Universal Negro Improvement Association, therefore, desires to inspire you to the vision of thought that is clear, that is scientific, that is real and positive. Utopia. There are hundreds of millions of us Black men who are proud of our skin. And to us, the African empire will not be a utopia. Neither will it be dangerous nor fail to serve our best interest, because we realize that, like the leopard, we cannot change our skins. Wars. Get out of my bag, boy. Get your butt out of my bag. Get out of my bag. Get out of my bag. Get out of my bag, sucker. Get out of my bag, sucker. Wars. Wars. I'm reading you. Want me to read you a story? I'm reading you about wars. Wars. The history of the past teaches us that we have had many wars. We have had many wars. No, sir, that's trash. Get out of here. Get out of here, sucker. No, they don't want any on this book. All right, let me finish reading. The history of the past teaches us that we have had many wars, each more deadly, each more catastrophic, and even as the War of 1914 to 1918 was the most deadly we have experienced for ages, so in the very near future we shall see the most bloody conflict. Go ahead, push it. We will see. Push it. We will see the most bloody conflict ever waged by man. Whether it is to be a war of the races or of the nations, no one can tell. But so long as this injustice continues, so long as the strong continues to oppress the weak, so long as the powerful nations arrange amongst themselves to oppress the weaker ones and to keep the more unfortunate of humanity in serfdom and to rob and exploit them, so long will cause the war to be fed with the fuel of revenge, of hatred, and of discontent. Wealth. To be preposterous in whatever we do is the sign of true wealth. We may be wealthy in not only having money, but in spirit and health. Money. Not only in money, but in spirit and health. Spirit and health. It is the most helpful agency toward a self-satisfying life. One lives in an age like this, nearer perfection by being wealthy than by being poor. To the content soul, wealth is a stepping stone to perfection. To the miser, it is the nearest avenue to hell. I would prefer to be honestly wealthy than miserably poor. Woman. What the night is to the day is woman to man. The period of change that brings light in darkness, darkness out of light, and semi-light out of darkness are like the changes we find in women day by day. She makes one happy, then miserable. You are to be to her kind, then unkind. Constant, yet inconsistent. Constant, yet inconstant. Thus, we have woman. No real man can do without her. We are circumvented today by environments more dangerous than those which circumvented other peoples in any other age. We are face to face with environments in our civilization that is highly developed, a civilization that is competing with itself for its own destruction, a civilization that cannot last because it has no spiritual foundation, a civilization that is vicious, crafty, dishonest, immoral, irreligious, and corrupt. And we are about done. They have a picture of Amy Jacquees Garvey, the widow of Marcus Garvey and mother of his two sons, Marcus Jr. and Julius. Julius Garvey. Marcus Garvey Jr. She is to whom we are grateful for having compiled the philosophy and opinions of Marcus Garvey.
Marcus Garvey?
Let's see about the author. Journalist, publisher, philosopher, writer, and first national hero of Jamaica, Marcus Garvey, August 17th of 1887 to June 10th of 1940. Hey, you better be careful, son. Become widely known through his leadership as President General of the organization known as the Universal Negro Improvement Association, or the UNIA. He and the members of the UNIA developed auxiliary organizations which include the Black Star Line, Universal African Legionnaires, and the Black Cross Nurses. Through publication of the Negro World weekly newspaper, Garvey presented his views in front-page editorials to a global audience. References. References. Number 1, Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey, Volume 1 and 2, edited by Amy Jacquees Garvey. Number 2, The Black Man, Marcus Garvey's newspaper. Number 3, More Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey, Volume 3, previously unpublished papers, edited by Amy Jacquees Garvey and E.U. Eisen Undum. A people without the knowledge of their past, history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. And I like that saying. Let me mark that up. A people without the knowledge of their past, history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots, DJ. Did you hear what Mr. Marcus Garvey said? Mr. Marcus Mosiah Garvey?
Daddy! I don't know what's
Let's see. Let us see. Marcus Garvey. Number 1. The slogan of the UNIA is Africa for the Africans. Number 2. The Universal Negro Improvement Association has continually operated for over 100 years. Visit them online. 100 years. 100 years, man. Visit them online at http all that other stuff. www.theunia-acl.com. The red, black, and green was presented to the world as the colors of all African people by 20,000 members of the UNIA in New York City on August 13th of 1920. August 13th, 2020 is the 100-year anniversary of this event. From August 1st, 1920 to August 30th, 1920, a month-long plebiscite was held with 20,000 delegates in attendance. Two of the products of the plebiscite were the Declaration of Rights of the Negro People of the World and the UNIA Constitution. Number 5. Excerpts from Marcus Garvey's speech, Africa for the Africans. Number 6. Marcus Garvey's speech. Marcus Garvey's successor as President General of the UNIA, James Robert Stewart, took his entire family to Gangela, Bong, Liberia, and established a school, farm, and hospital which continue operating to this day. I wonder if it's still going. Get out of my stuff and leave my stuff alone. Number 7. A lawsuit against Firestone was filed on November 17th of 2005, seeking to end the exploitation of Liberia's land, labor, and children. See web.archive.org. We got some numbers. 2006123018527. Number 8. This statement of Garvey's is cited in thousands of results in a search of Google Books, and over 85,000 results in a verbatim internet search. Number 9. Motto of the UNIA. Number 10. Extracted from first message to the Negroes of the world from Atlanta prison. Marcus Garvey's look for me in the whirlwind message. Number 11. Extracted from the first message. I wonder, what is this? I guess this is the references. This is still part of the references.
I don't think so, Dad.
I think so. I'm almost done, son.
Almost done?
Extracted from the first message to the Negroes of the world from Atlanta prison, Marcus Garvey looked for me in the whirlwind message. And number 12, the 100th anniversary of the red, black, and green flag will be August the 13th, 2020. We call on all conscious Black people at home and abroad to wear red, black, and green on August 13th each year to send a message, make a statement, and demonstrate mental emancipation. And that was Emancipated from Mental Slavery. Selected sayings of Mr. Marcus Garvey. Yes, sir, I am done. We have read the whole book. We read the whole book in 2 days, baby. We read the whole book in 2 days, man. Yes, I'm done. I'm done reading.
What it says on here?
It says emancipated from mental slavery.
That's it.
It says selected sayings of Marcus Garvey.
What it says on the shirt?
On his shirt, let me see if I can look at it. Oh, I can't see what that pen says. It's a pen, though. It's a pen. That's Mr. Marcus Garvey.
Daddy?
Marcus Garvey.
This is Iron Man.
No, sir. That's a letter S. It says slavery.
What?
It's a letter E.
Spider-Man.
EMANCIPATED.
Iron Man got the suits.
Emancipated.
He got the
Emancipated.
He got the suits.
From mental slavery. There you go.
He got the suits.
But that was Selected Sayings of Mr. Marcus Garvey, Emancipated from Mental Slavery. Man, we are finished another book down, man. Oh man, we moved through that one quick. Let's see what else we're gonna read. What's next?
Iron Man.
What is next, man?
I don't know.
I think.
He got the suits.
All right, we'll come back next time with The Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson. That'll be the next book. That'll be the next book we read. The Miseducation of the Negro. Now, I've never read this book. I've heard about this book multiple times. Just like I've heard about Mr. Marcus Garvey. I know this is my first time reading about him.
We can read that tomorrow.
Yes, sir. We're gonna start reading that tomorrow.
Read it tomorrow.
Yes, sir. But this one we finished reading today. We finished reading Mr. Marcus Garvey today. Put Spider-Man up. And get down. Y'all get down. Get down.
What are these?
Get down. Get down. Leave my stuff alone. Get down. I hope that everybody enjoyed it. I hope they can pull something from Mr. Marcus Garvey, because there's always something that you can learn. There's always something that you can learn and apply it to your life. You know, maybe it might help you. Can you help emancipate your own mind? Can you emancipate your own mind? Can you prepare yourself? You know, all the things, a lot of the things that Mr. Marcus Garvey was talking about. Definitely some good sayings. Definitely good sayings. But man, until next time, man. Reading with Shilo. Reading with Shilo, man. Shilo out. Shilo out.
And
Like, comment, subscribe, tell your people. Yeah. And we'll get with you next time. Shalom.
Shalom.
Say shalom. Say shalom, boy. Say shalom, my boy.
Shalom.